That's right. I've always heard people say, if you want your kids to follow Jesus like the parents are, then the kids need to see evidence of Jesus in the family, in their parents. They need to see miracles. Yeah. They need to see like the prayer works. I'll never forget, I had a conversation with my second son a while ago, and I said, hey, well, man, these are the types of things we pray about. And he said, yeah, I tried. Doesn't work for me. And obviously we got to talk about persistence. You got to talk about actually God teaches us to pray like we're a nagging toddler. Like that's the way that we're actually taught. Like you keep going, because what father doesn't want to give a child, a son, a daughter, the thing that their heart desires?
You are listening to the Famous at Home podcast with Dr. Josh and Christy Straub.
Because when it's all said and done, we all want to know that we were famous at home. Welcome back to the Famous at Home podcast. My name is Joshua Straub. Today, I have one of my closest friends on the podcast joining me here live, Luke Smallbone. He is one of the brothers. He is half of For King and Country, and he's joining me to talk about their upcoming movie called Unsung Hero. It's based off of a song that they originally wrote about their mom, and he's going to describe a little bit about how the movie came about. It hits theaters April 26th. We'll have it there in the show notes, links that you can find to the band as well as for the movie. We would love for you to go see the movie, get tickets at your local theater. It hits theaters April 26th everywhere, and we've seen the movie. Christy and I've seen the movie. It is a beautiful movie about family, and I don't want to give away too much because it is just, it's a beautiful movie, and you don't see a lot of wholesome movies, and it's a true story. I mean, you'll hear Luke talk about it. It's their story of coming to America and the hardships that they experienced, but more importantly, it's about faith, it's about family, it's about prayer, and you'll get to be invited in to some of the behind the scenes today here on the podcast. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to my friend, Luke Smallbone. Well, welcome back to the Famous at Home podcast. Today, I've got one of my favorite humans, actually, on the planet here. Oh, my goodness,
that feels very loaded.
Such a great friend. Thank you for being with me, and thank you for taking time out to do the podcast.
Oh, no worries. Honored to do it. It's funny. I reflect back on when we first met, which was at church, 3 or 4 years ago?
Yeah.
And all that has transpired since then
so wild.
is been kind of crazy. So, and I had another friend tell me years prior to that, hey, you need to know Josh and Christy. So the fact that
and now we're all good friends.
And now we're all good friends.
Oh my goodness,
awesome.
man.
Anyway.
And to see God move in such ways, when there's a kindredness.
That's right.
And there's a similar spirit in that relationship, and it's just so cool.
Yeah.
So you guys, and this is what's fun for me, is getting to hear your story, because the cool part about our friendship is we're both dads. We're both husbands to two wives who are, our wives are just like two peas in a pod.
Yes.
So why don't you start? We're on the Famous at Home podcast. This guy here he personifies being famous at home. And so that's what I love about you. I would love for you to just spend a couple minutes just telling us a little bit about your clan.
Yeah. So married, come on up on 14 years, if you can believe that, which I don't feel old enough to be able to say 14 years. We got 4 kiddos. Jude, who's 11. Phoenix is 9. Leo is 6. And then we have a little girl who is 3, and her name is Evie Joy. And that's our clan, man. That's my, I've often said for many, many years that my favorite title in the world is father, because without my marriage, I don't get that title. Without Courtney, I don't get the privilege of these kids looking at me saying dad. And so and the other thing is wonderful is in father, you look at those kids, and I see my wife. I see my beautiful wife that we have invested, coming up on 14 years together. And that is as my dad would say, that is the fruit of our love. But truthfully, it is it's a joy to be it's a joy to be a father. I love it.
And I want to come back around to that, because it's one of the things that unites you and I is the way that we love to parent our kids and see lens through fatherhood. Yeah. And I'm going to circle back around, because this whole story starts, first of all, though, with Unsung Hero.
Yep.
And it starts with the movie that's coming out. By the way, we're going to put everything that you need to know in the show notes today. So make sure you check out the show notes, and Luke share kind of where to check everything out, get tickets for that coming up. But it started with a song, right?
Yes, yeah.
And I would love for you to just take us into a little bit about what that song, because this is you as a kid, this is about your mom. And take us into how that even began to begin with.
Song. So my brother Joel and I are in a band called For King Country, and so predominantly I'm meant to be making music is what I should be doing. But we're in a season where we've developed a film, and as you said, called Unsung Hero. It's coming out April 26th of this year. But the first thing that happened was we wrote a song. It was called Unsung Hero. And ironically enough, I'll tell you a little bit of the backstory behind when we wrote it. I had gone into the studio, and my brother Joel and my dad and I are actually what make For King Country, which is weird. It's just Joel and I, but my dad is a silent member. He manages us, but he co-owns For King Country. It's not the way most people do music, but that's the way that we've done it. And so anyway, I went into the studio and I said, hey, what do you think about writing a song about dad? You know, my dad's 74, you know, he's getting older, and my dad is, as he would even say, a flawed man, but a good man. He's taught me basically everything I know about how to love people, how to treat people. He's taught me right from wrong. So anyway, I said, hey, what do we write about that? And Joel goes, I don't have a lot of excitement about that, but what if we write a song about mom? And so anyway, what we ended up working on was, in some cases, Unsung Hero is predominantly about our mom, but the first verse is actually about our dad. Most people don't know that, but it's about our dad. And Joel's the one who sings the song about my dad. He sings the first verse is about dad, and I sing the second verse about mom. But the song really is about mothers and about, ultimately it's about parents, it's about uncles, it's about people that are the unsung heroes in your life. I think people are tempted to think in today's day and age that unless you have a platform, unless you're on stage, unless people are listening to you, that your life doesn't count for much. Yep. My life is filled with people pouring into me that you'll never know their names. Yeah. And I find that to be some of the most important things. Those are the most important relationships in my life. My mom raised 7 kids. She 2 girls and 5 boys. Oldest girl, 5 boys in the middle, and a little girl. No, not so little anymore, but a girl to finish. And if you were to ask every one of us boys, you know, who's probably had the most influence in their life, we would all say our mother. When our mother walks in the room, you will see pretty much every son go up and give her a kiss on the cheek. There is reverence and there is honor for her, because we all recognize without our mom and the love that she has given us and the things that the conversations and the example, we would not be the husbands, we would not be the people, not even close, that we are today.
It's so cool. And this is why we're doing this interview on Famous at Home, is because this movie is so connected to family in so many powerful ways. And I just want to know, just behind the scenes, take us into it just real quick. I've actually thought about this. When you walk into the room and it's a song, but when does this idea of a movie become a reality? Like how did that all
so we wrote,
to go oh, it's actually happening. It moves from idea to it's actually happening.
So we had finished this this song, and we were actually in the studio working on our Christmas project. This was all during the pandemic. It's 2020. And we had written the song. We hadn't released the song, but you send it. In music, you quickly realize what you've got. It's not necessarily. I don't know if written word is the same way, but you pretty quickly realize with a song, you can play it for anybody, because a song connects with you emotionally. You don't have to think about it. You either like it or you don't. It's just the way it is. And so we were sending it around, and people were really, really moved by it. And so we did a movie in 2016 called Priceless, and the producer who worked with us on that project has remained a dear friend of mine. And he's always kept saying, Luke, when are we going to work on another project? When are we going to work on something else? So I just one day, I didn't ask anybody's permission. I just one day called him up and said, hey man, I got an idea. I've been telling my parents' family story coming from Australia to America for the last 12 years. And then the story is this. Our dad was a concert promoter in Australia, and he lost a lot of money on a tour that happened in Australia, and he was looking for a fresh start for the family. We lost everything. We lost the house, we lost the car, we lost the life savings. And he pretty quickly realized that the only way for him to really restart was actually to move countries and come to America, where the industry was kind of the center of the music industry is in Nashville. And so we move for a job, and as we move, my dad loses that job. And so we're stranded outside the world once again, no friends, no family, no car, no furniture, no way for my little sister to be born in a hospital. And I've told that story for many, many years. I've had people come up and they'll be like, man, Luke, you should write a book. And the truth is, I was homeschooled, so I don't read or write very well. And that's a joke.
That's actually you read more books than anybody I know.
But I said, but maybe we can make a movie. And so I call up my buddy, and here's the thing about films is, I mean, hundreds and hundreds of films go into development every year. Like, it's a very normal thing, and it kind of means nothing. You'll see all these big movie companies say, we've gotten to an agreement with so-and-so about this story. It basically means nothing. All it means is that they're developing a story. And so we go to this company, and we start developing the story. They start pouring a little bit of money. You go get a script writer, and that was the beginning of us telling the story. And then you get to a point where we had said, hey, we're making this movie at this date, and it was the fall of 22. And it was like, I don't know, or was it fall of 22? Yeah, fall of 22. And 2 months before, that producer and his company backed out of the deal. And they had all the financing and everything. And so we were like, oh, and because I'm in a band and we've got to keep schedules, that was our only time to film it. And it's just 2 months before the project was to start. So anyway, we just go, hey, God, I mean, if this is meant to happen, you're just going to find a way. I kid you not, we raised $6 million in 3 days. It was unbelievable. And then obviously we went into production that 2 months later.
That's amazing. And that's when you know God's hands.
That's right.
In it. Yeah.
That's right.
So this is you're actually a producer on the film.
Yeah.
Tell us about that a little bit. Like even just from because I'd love for you because you're not just a producer, but you're also peering in on your life story as a child.
Yeah.
Right. Well, so tell us.
I mean, first of all, the producer side of it is people are like, what does that even mean? And it's actually a great question because producers can mean a ton of things. To every film that you ever look up on IMDb or Wikipedia or whatever, there's going to have all of these producers, and some of them are in title only. That's another thing that LA and Hollywood does. Yeah. You can have some producers that literally do jack diddly squat. Then you have other people that have the same title that do virtually everything. And you can't really see the difference on the credits. Producing has a lot to do with the idea. Getting the team built to be able to see that idea come to fruition. And that'll deal with directors, that'll deal with actors, that'll deal with the financing. So producers do most of the work up front. And then you get on set and it's like you've got kind of someone to take care of everything on set until it's such a big issue that it's a producer's job. And so once again, you get into some big issues, and we had some of those issues on set, and then it becomes your job to, hey, we got to solve these big issues. And so that's the producing component. The other side of it, in that it's our story, I think that because a lot of people have said, and it's a very valid question, how do you have perspective on a story that it's your story? You were a kid growing up. Like, how does that work? And I think I've told the story looking back for so long that I know the beats that are interesting. I know the things that make that story compelling. Yeah. I was also not quite 5 when this story really started. So at the end of the day, I'm now looking at this story over 30 years later. I'm pretty keenly aware of the things that are powerful or meaningful, because now I'm nearly at my dad's age when he first came to America. And so as I'm raising my kids, dealing with what if I was going through job loss, financial ruin, incredible stress on the family, how am I dealing with those things? And so that was part of the reason why I think that for both Joel and I, we felt like we could even attempt this, because we've spoken about it in the rearview mirror for so long that we kind of understand the beats.
As part of that, tell us some of the scenes, some of the stories that that stick out to you. What are some of the things that you like really?
Well, I think the biggest
powerful.
The biggest thing about the movie is that it's basically all true. Like, when we actually don't say based on a true story, we actually say this is a true story. And there are a few things that didn't happen maybe in the timeline that we tell it, but virtually everything that happens in the movie
amazing
happened in our lives.
And there were so many times where, because Christy and I had the privilege of being able to see it, and then afterwards I'm calling Luke, and I'm like, did this really happen?
Yeah.
Did this really happen?
Yeah.
And this happened? And he's, yep.
Yeah.
And you're giving me backstory
And there's
to
a
it,
few
which is
things.
great.
There's a few things that, what I always say with film is, if you're gonna get into film and you want to tell a true story, you accentuate the highs and you accentuate the lows. That's how you feel something. Because at the end of the day, art is, you have to demand people to feel something. How many times have you gone to a theater and what's the first question you ask somebody when you walk out of the theater?
Yeah.
What did you think?
What'd you think? How was
What'd
the
you
movie?
think?
Yeah.
And if someone just says, yeah, that was good, you've lost.
You've lost. That's a good
If
point.
someone
Yep.
leaves delighted out of their mind, you've won. And in some cases, with certain movies, if you leave angry, they won.
Yeah.
It's a good
No, it's
movie.
a good movie.
It demands an emotional
Emotion.
response. That's what good films should do.
Yeah, this one surely does. You get to the end. I'm not giving it away because you got to go see it. So make sure you get tickets as soon as it comes available. It's April 26th. April 26th. It'll be in theaters. So make sure you get out to see the movie. Take us into like maybe one or two stories that really stuck out to you. Maybe it was as a child that are now in the movie, or maybe you saw them differently because of the movie.
There's two stories that are probably the most significant. The first one was when we came to America. I think I look at my dad now and like, Dad, did you have a plan when you landed in America? Because like we didn't have a car, we didn't have any furniture.
And it does look like that.
And in some cases, it's a little bit like my dad to just be like, hey, I think that we're meant to do this. We're just gonna go. And when you come and, he thought he was going to have a job here. So he's thinking, hey, in the first few weeks, I'm going to be able to have, arrange for a car. And when all of that falls through, all of a sudden you're like, I don't have any income at all. And I didn't come with anything. So I've got to figure out a way to make this work. And so the first amazing story was we came to America in the fall or the beginning of the fall. I think it was late August. And so Thanksgiving's coming up. And I mean, you Americans make a big old deal out of Thanksgiving.
Right.
We don't, but we don't have Thanksgiving in Australia. I mean, Canada's got some.
Yeah, Canada's
got some sort of idea.
Well, I didn't know that.
America's got Thanksgiving. I mean, literally, the rest of the world doesn't have Thanksgiving. The rest of the world is that ungrateful. All right, and so it was a new thing for us. And so this family comes to us and there's like, hey, why don't you come over for Thanksgiving? And we go over there and we have a remarkable time. It was the first time we met this, really had met this family, and the father of the household pretty quickly realized. I mean, there's 6 kids coming in. There's my mom who's like 7 months pregnant at the time. He's quickly realizing like, this is a very odd situation and what's my role in it? And he immediately recognized that we didn't have a car, and very flippantly, he just gave us a car. It was like, hey, I got a pretty new car and it's yours. And so that was the first that was just kind of like, and I think it gave my mom and dad, we tell the story a little bit. It gave them a little bit of like, oh, maybe there's something for us here in America, because that stuff doesn't. I mean, how many times have you heard people giving a brand new car? It just doesn't really happen.
Right.
The next was Christmas was coming up, and there's 6 kids, and my mom ended up having my sister 4 days after this Christmas, and which is fascinating to think about. But Christmas was coming up, and my mom had always made a big deal out of Christmas and Santa Claus and just making it a super magical, special time. And she started saying things like, hey, I don't think Santa's going to be able to do much for us this year. And I don't think that, I don't know, it may have to go to the dollar store type gifts or what's going to happen this year. And so anyway.
Playing her hand.
I don't want to give away too much and if their kids are listening. But some folks heard about this and heard that Christmas was going to be tough for us. And they got names, they got ages. And a few days before Christmas, they came and helped Santa out a little bit. And still, I mean, I get emotional even telling this story because still to this day, I have never received more gifts in my entire life than I did that Christmas. Whoa. It was awe-inspiring to see other people. None of those people didn't know us. I think it was a first grade class that did this, and the parents. Whoa. And I think for my mom, we look at God's love for us at times in an exchange relationship. And it's like, hey, I've got enough, so why would God give me any extra? When there's other people in the world that are desperately hungry, that they've got all sorts of crazy issues. But my mom prayed for, like, God, help us find a way here.
Yeah.
And it wasn't even a need. It was a want. Christmas doesn't have to happen the way that we want it to.
Yeah.
And she felt so loved by God that she just felt like God sees the things that I wanted to make special for my family.
Yeah.
And look what he did.
Man. And you think about, too, God's grace and his goodness for each of us. And it's wild because you look back on that with fondness, but what your parents, I'm trying to imagine what your parents were experiencing while they were going through that at similar ages to us today, and how stressful that was for them. And yet here God is showing up in the middle of that. Because I'm just thinking of families that are listening right now, and you're in a stressful season, and just God wants to show up in your life.
My dad told me today, like literally I had this phone call, a few hours ago. He said, we were talking about another issue. Obviously, my life at this point does get progressively more complicated every day that I exist, it feels. And we were dealing with a little bit of an issue just within, our world. And we were talking about unconditional love and the power of unconditional love. As parents, there's moments for discipline. There's moments for grace. And at other times, there's just moments for unconditional love.
Yeah.
What I've found as a parent is obviously you have to teach your kids right from wrong. But the moments that your kids are expecting discipline and you show them unconditional love, it hits them so much harder than the discipline ever does. And he was talking about an issue, and he goes, I'll never forget when this church showed up with furniture. The unconditional love that we didn't even go to the church. It was another church in the local community.
Whoa.
And they showed up, and I'll never forget the room and the place that I was standing, watching all of these people that had volunteered their time, their money, with furniture for a whole house, and they're loading it into the house. He was talking about that today. You're talking about 32 years ago that happened, and he's still talking about the power of unconditional love that local church showed him then.
That's remarkable. Man.
Yeah.
What are you, I would, and this is where I wanted to come back to with this conversation, is some of the lessons in Unsung, like just the lessons you learn. I mean, there's lessons that come out in Unsung Hero. And this is why I'm saying, I don't think there's a more powerful, family-friendly, family-focused movie for such a time. I think God has designed. It's cool how you look back on your own life and you realize God was using and orchestrating all of this for such a time as this for so many of us.
Yeah.
To focus on the family, our family. And I would love for you to even just share some of the lessons you've learned from your mom, from your dad in your own life that you're now implementing with your kids today. Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, so one of the things that Mom was always good about, and obviously we tell this story, not to give it away, but the unsung hero in this film is my mom. Yeah. And you go on a wild adventure to get to that place in the film. But one of the things that I felt, it's going to sound harsh, and my mom, I think you've had my mom on your podcast.
Yeah, she's been on here. Yeah,
my mom is an incredible person, but she's not what you think she's going to be, if that makes sense. She's tough. Yeah. She raised 5 boys, and she would even say, she's like, I think I was better at raising the boys than the girls. Maybe I don't show that to my sisters. But anyway, so there was one thing that she said to me when I was a kid that I felt like was lived out in the film. And she used to say, she would say, are you disappointed right now? And I'd say, and it could be about, I didn't get to go over to that friend's house, or, I was planning on going to go to the friend's house, but I got sick, or whatever it might be. And she would ask this question. She would say, are you disappointed right now, Luke? And I'd say, yeah, I'm disappointed. And she said, it's good to learn how to overcome disappointment. And when I watched the film, 90% of it's disappointment. Yeah. And my mom never, she actually lived that. She actually lived like, I'll never forget the real life character who Candace Cameron plays. Her name is Kay DeKalb, or Kay Smith is her real name. And we still know her obviously very, very well to this day. Yeah. And I interviewed her for the film. And she said, I got to tell you a funny story. And I was like, okay. She said, I came over to your house to witness to you guys. And in the process was giving you groceries and all this other stuff. And she said, I left spending time with your mom as if she was not witnessing, but mentoring me. And she said there was this one moment where you guys had been given all this furniture. And just so you're aware, like when we got given furniture, it wasn't like people went to Rooms to Go or Restoration Hardware and got us furniture. This was like a group of people saying, I don't think we need this couch over here. You know? And so I still remember, we got this brown corduroy couch. I mean, it made sin look good. All right. And it was bad. And so anyway, Kay once again comes over. And they're spending, Kay used to come and just do, there's 7 kids eventually. And so to do ironing and laundry, I mean, you can imagine how long that took. And so she would come and just fold laundry and speak and hang out with my mom. And so one day she came over and my mom opens the door and Kay's like, oh, you've got some furniture. And Kay says, your mom looked at me and she said, isn't God good? Look at the couch. It matches the other chairs in the room. Isn't God good? Wow. And it wasn't good furniture, folks. It may have matched, but it was terrible furniture. And that's, once again, it's good to learn how to overcome disappointment.
Good. And the gratitude of your mom in that.
Oh, yeah.
The other thing that this speaks to, and it's one thing that we've talked about a lot lately, is just the power, especially as families, as moms and dads in the busy culture we find ourselves in, is just community.
Yeah.
And this, your life speaks to the community that's come around you.
Yeah.
Talking about this story, but another component of that, and so I think the thing is, there's so many lessons that you can take away from this movie, and I think that's, without giving too much away, just when you go see the movie, just even asking yourself, like, I just can't wait to hear from people what they felt like, what people are taking away from it in terms of how are we going to live differently with our own family as a result of this, or how did this touch me? What am I going to do? And those are 2 questions that we've been asking a lot. Like, right, Lord, what do you want me to know, and what do you want me to do?
Yep.
What do you want me to know about this, and what do you want me to do?
Yep.
And that could be that you're the ones serving someone in your neighborhood who was in your situation.
Yep.
And it could be that you're the one saying, hey, we need help right now. But the key here is there's stories of family, there's stories of community, and there's also stories of prayer.
Yep.
Can you speak to that a little bit as well? Because I think prayer is also a
key
component of this.
That's right. I've always heard people say, if you want your kids to follow Jesus like the parents are, then the kids need to see evidence of Jesus in the family, in their parents. They need to see miracles.
Yeah.
They need to see, like, the prayer works. I'll never forget, I had a conversation with my second son a while ago, and I said, hey, well, man, these are the types of things we pray about. And he said, yeah, I tried. Doesn't work for me. And obviously, we got to talk about persistence. You got to talk about, actually, God teaches us to pray like we're a nagging toddler. Like, that's the way that we're actually taught. Like, you keep going, because what father doesn't want to give a child, a son, a daughter, the thing that their heart desires? So we got to talk about that. But anyway, in this case, we were so desperate in those early days that we would just gather around as a family and just start praying for what God, for what we needed and what God could do in our life. And so we would pray for, there's so many stories. We'd pray for enough money for rent. We'd pray for jobs. We used to joke, and don't take offense to this, America, but we used to joke that we did all the jobs that Americans don't like to do. So we cleaned houses, we raked lawns, we mowed lawns. I learned how to mow lawns at 5, which is hilarious. I don't think, it's hard for me to comprehend sending my kids out there with a push mower at 5. Wild. And I was tall, so maybe it helped. But so the power of prayer was always real to us. It was always like, man, you ask God for things. I saw it. And so, you know, one of the cool stories about just even speaking of rent, we were renting a small home, and I've taken the kids by that house from time to time. It's not a very nice house. And the landlord had kind of become, I don't want to say friends, but he knew we were struggling as a family. And I think we were in there for 2 years. Then we rented another home before then my parents moved to the house that they're in now. And it came time for us to move out of this house. And just speaking of how miracles randomly happen, God usually, for a miracle, uses people. We don't need to forget that. People sometimes are like, I want to see a miracle like the light turned on and off, you know, without me, or miraculous healing. And God can do all of those things, but oftentimes he chooses to use people. And so anyway, we get to, Dad goes and tells the landlord, hey man, we're moving to a different place. And he goes, oh, okay, you know, and he goes, yeah, I forgot to collect rent for like 4 or 5 months out of 24 months. And he goes, it's my fault, not yours. You can have it.
Wow.
It's just stuff. So you just said, you know, so as a kid, we were experiencing those types of things. You know, when you're seeing a car be given to you, you're seeing groceries just show up on your doorstep. We'd have people, you know, send us money, and unbeknownst to anybody else, it would cover our bills by dollars. You're seeing rent disappear. I mean, it was just crazy stuff.
Well, and even in the movie too, the plays itself out with the mom having the baby, you know, and just all those things. You start to see some of those things. The thing that there's one part there, and I don't want to give it away, but one of the most wild, most wild stories for me was you guys coming into the States and being in customs. That was one of the
I'll tell you the story.
That was one of the most wild parts for me.
So when we came to America, you got to understand, there's 6 kids. My mom's pregnant. Technically, I don't think you're allowed to come over that pregnant, first of all. So you got to try and hide that pregnancy. Yeah. And then there's my parents. So there's 8 of us, 8 and a half of us, right? Come on. And we've got 16 suitcases. And I think that we were claiming that we were coming to visit or something. I don't know what my dad worked out. Yeah, and so quickly, you know, you don't have to be a rocket scientist as a custom officer to go, I think there's something going on here. All right. And so they pulled us aside. We were actually in Hawaii. They pulled us aside and they took us what is called secondary inspection, which I have been into a few times. I don't know if you have, but it's a jolly good time, let me tell you.
Yeah, we've been in there.
And they're trying to get to the bottom of like what's going on, what is actually the truth. And so sure enough, he's saying, we have return tickets. The whole idea was we're coming as a family, but we're meant to be leaving in 6 months. And there was question marks with the 16 bags and all the things that we were bringing. Like, are they really doing this or not? Really? Yeah. And anyway, in the film we say it's my grandmother, but it was actually my auntie. So they search your bags. They're searching everything. In the film, my youngest brother starts crying. Ironically enough, it was my oldest sister in secondary inspection who starts crying. And my mom's like, my oldest sibling is coming unhinged in secondary inspection, you know? And so it's very tense. It's very stressful. And they could have easily just sent us home, and then it's back to square one. Like, where do you pick up the pieces? Right. You've told all your family that you're going to America just to get to the border, and they say no. Yeah. There was a letter that my auntie had written, said, looking forward to seeing you in 6 months. And because of that letter, we were allowed in America. And that is a true story.
That blew my mind. Yeah. That was one of the moments where I called. I was like, did this actually happen? And he's like,
yeah, not from my grandma, but from
actually
my auntie.
Happened.
Yeah, Auntie Joe.
Unbelievable. Can you tell everybody where they can buy tickets? It's so funny. We usually have books. We usually have projects that people are working on. Never a movie. So it's like, just go buy tickets.
UnsungHeroMovie.com is where all the information is. Obviously, I don't know when you're airing this, but we're a few weeks out from being able to just look up online and go like Fandango or wherever you go from being able to get tickets. But depending on when this is released,
we'll be releasing it before ahead of time.
So you should be able to just go online and just anywhere you go get tickets. If you just go to a theater, if you want to pick up tickets early. Obviously, in this scenario, faith-based films, it's the wild, wild west when it comes to. We have Lionsgate as a distributor, and they're just bean counters for the most part. They want to make money. And from our vantage point, we want to see revival take place through the family. But when it comes to these partnerships working together, they're like, hey, we think that this could make money. We want to see revival through the family. So we're working with Lionsgate. And where people can help us is you just have to, people just need to go see it. You have to have the transaction for Hollywood to honor and respect the art that Christians are making. It comes down to, in some cases for them, which is sad, but truthful, dollars and cents. So for people out there, people think of like buying out a theater as like, oh, it's going to cost thousands and thousands of dollars. Well, most theaters are 40, 50 seats, and it doesn't cost that much. So if there's businesses out there that are saying, hey, man, I just want to support this thing, let us know, and we can get you a buyout of it. Those are the types of things that actually really move the needle for us.
Yeah. And you can let us know. You obviously, those of you listening to the podcast, go to famousathome.com. You use the contact page. If you want to get in touch with them in any way, we can obviously make that connection to buy out theaters, that type of situation. Revival through the family. I mean, come on. I mean, this is what we're all about. And so I highly encourage you, if you don't want to take your kids are too young, get a babysitter, have a date night, tell another couple, get another couple to go with you.
I will say this, speaking to the kids,
Yeah.
this is kind of hilarious. So I got a 6-year-old, because we always wanted to make films that the whole family could go to and be entertained by, right?
That's right.
And so I have Josh and I talk about this a lot, but I take my kids out on the road with me virtually everywhere that we go. And so a couple weekends ago, I've got my 6-year-old boy, Leo. We call him Leo. And he's out on the road with me, and we're doing these screenings and we're doing these events. And usually when the screenings start, we go do something else, right? And he goes, Dad, can we watch the screening tonight? I was like, no, man, let's not watch the film again, like that type of thing. And I said, Leo, what do you love about the film? And he goes, it's just got such good drama. A 6-year-old said that. So 6-year-olds enjoy the film as well.
I love that kid so much. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I mean, take your kids. I mean, if your kids are old enough to go, I mean, I'm thinking of sitting Micah or 3-year-old in a movie theater.
That may be an adventure.
Yeah. But take your kids, tell others about it, and let's see revival through the family. Luke, thank you so much for being with us, man.
Oh, good, man. Pleasure.
Super honor. Till next week, keep in mind that the greatest red carpet you'll walk is through your front door.